How's it going, everyone? Turtle here, back to do the second part of my How to Counter Heavy Tank series. And in this video, we'll be focusing on Axis and their counters to heavy tanks. But if you watched the last video where I talked about allies and their counters, you might have noticed that I never recommended you try to snare heavy tanks with allied infantry. And there's a reason why. I can't recommend it because two of Axis heavy tanks have built-in anti-infantry countermeasures, and that is the DAK Tiger and the WEHR Brumbar. The DAK Tiger, I'm going to show you here at Vet 1, gets the S-mine, and it's going to launch off these little anti-infantry mines that'll shred everything in close vicinity. Depending on how close they are, they'll get either pinned or suppressed. And if you notice closely, it won't fire out the back. So what I'm going to do is make all these guys enemies, and then I'm going to have this fire. And so you can see on the side, these two rifleman squads were almost completely wiped, but they were pinned. On the back, they actually did get pinned. I'm guessing one of the models must have been able to catch the some of the effect, but they didn't take much damage on the back side. On the front, they were pinned. On the side, they must have been too close and were pinned, and these guys were suppressed, so they were just far enough away. They didn't get the pin. They just got suppressed. So that's it'll stop. You know, if you try to snare them, it's just not worth it. I've had many units die to this S-mine. So if you see a DAK Tiger tank, I'd be very wary about trying to snare that. What I'm going to do is just get rid of that so they're not firing off in the distance. Alright, so the next ability is on the Brumbar. It has the Shatter Will ability. So if I take these two guys, tell them to move this way, and make them enemies. When they get close to the Brumbar and he activates this ability, it'll minus their speed, their rate of fire, and it lasts for about 10 seconds. So if you're trying to snare a Brum, it can be very difficult if they activate this ability. And I can just reverse back, and they won't catch up to me at all. There we go, now it finally hit. I guess the whole squad had to get in there, but now that it got hit, you see how slow they're moving and how this Brumbar can just quickly zip out of here. So I would say don't try to push the Brumbar or the Tiger with your infantry for snaring, because it could backfire on you. But for Axis, the first recommendation I'd have is, yeah, of course, try to snare allied heavy tanks, because allied heavy tanks, they don't have that Nazi space magic that the Brumbar has. They don't have these crazy mines that wipe infantry. They have instead, their abilities are pretty simple. The Matilda has smoke and critical repair, the Churchill has smoke and critical repair, and the Black Prince has smoke and critical repair. They all three have the same ability with some minor differences to the critical repair, but it's almost like we all know how the Allied forces won World War II is that they smoked out the Germans or something like that. I'm not sure why they all have smoke as their ability and critical repair. I hope that changes in the future. At least one of them gets something that's different, so it's not three versions of the same tank. Relic, if you're watching this, you have about a month and a half to think of a new ability for the Pershing when you add it. Please do not add the Pershing to the game with smoke as its ability. And with that, we'll jump into DAK and their counters. Jumping back into DAK now, and still on the topic of snares, I wanted to point out that if you go Battlefield Espionage and get the anti-tank incendiary munitions ability, this increases the snares on the Palm Grenadiers from 120 damage to 180, which 180 is pretty powerful for a snare, and that adds a burn damage from your AT guns on whatever they're shooting. Does 2% of the target's health for about 10 seconds. It stacks. It's crazy powerful. So if you're playing as DAK and you plan on getting out a lot of palm grens or pat guns, this is a pretty powerful ability. Now jumping over into specific abilities on individuals, I'd say DAK has maybe the strongest anti-tank ability in the game, and that is on their Pack 38 at Vet 1 for 35 munitions. They get Compromise Armor ability. This reduces the target's armor by 20% total across the board front, rear, and side all gets reduced by 20%. And this ability also stacks, which is insane. So right now we have a Black Prince 440 front armor. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pause this, make it an enemy, and I'm going to have this fire
Weapon team
at that tank. Goes from 440 to 352. Alright, that's a pretty big chunk. But then, when I have this DAK 38 fire, it goes from 440 to 352 to 281. So now, now anything that's firing at this Black Prince, Panzerjägers, P3s, Martyrs, anything has a much better chance at penning 281 than 440. And then looking at the sides and the rear, those also went down. So while this ability is active, I'm going to have these AT guns keep firing, and we'll see just how much damage they can do before it lifts. We get a lucky bounce on the front armor there. Those two pen. We'll see if this last volley pens. Oh, so when the ability ends, this Black Prince is left with 80 health. So 2 PaK 38s, all at the front, took it down almost all the way. I'm going to go ahead and delete that. So this ability, 35 munitions, it's 15 munitions cheaper than the AT gun for USF. The AP shot is 50 munitions on the AT gun for USF. This is 35. And this may be more powerful overall than that ability. So I'd say this ability is totally worth it. Super strong. The second ability for DAK is on the Flame Panzer. So, jumping over here to this, at Vet 1, you get the Flame Blind, which reduces the speed, the rotation rate, and the weapon's target and vision gets disabled. So, let's say you have something like a Churchill heavy tank, or someone's attacking you, and they're trying to run away. Let's say they're trying to go, over this way. If you use this Flame Panzer, and you use the Flame Bind, and you have the Martyrs attack it, start to move, and then it's just cruise shock, it's not going anywhere. And when the ability lifts, it's just about dead. And there goes, it's killed. 2 Martyrs, 1 Flame Panzer. Pretty powerful. You saw just how it didn't even get anywhere near where I was telling it to go. So, pretty powerful ability. I've had this used on me before. I've used it before. Flame Panzers are kind of common right now. I think they're pretty powerful. They're one of the more fun units in the game. What's not to love about a tank that shoots flames and gets to run around? It's quick, it gets to move and go through objects, cover, it rolls through all that. Also, I'm not going to showcase these, I'm just wanting to point these out. There's 2 other units with DAK that have, I'd say, fairly powerful AT abilities. So, the Cimavente at Vet 1 unlocks its Heat Round, which is very similar to the Flame Blind. It reduces the speed and rotation rate, except it doesn't blind them, it just does an extra damage. It always penetrates. You don't see this tank out a lot though. It's not as powerful as it used to be, but if it changes, or if you just like playing this battle group, I'd say it's worth it to try to keep this thing alive for the late game, so you can use that Heat Round on anything big that's in the field. The flat gun, even though I said I know I'm not going to do static emplacements, the
Get those rounds, let's stopping
target
everything.
engine automatically crits whatever vehicle it's targeting at, which is very powerful, especially if it's the first shot you're firing is going to do some engine damage. I'd say that's worth it to use this ability. 45 munitions is a little bit more expensive than some of these other abilities, but I'd say it's worth it. So this one's 30, this is 45. The Flame Panzer's ability is free, and that PaK gun has 35 munitions. So when you combine that with some of the mechanics with DAK, where they're generating munitions from like the Funk Panzer Wagon or these transfer depots, you can kind of make sure you always have munitions lined up for these abilities. Also, while talking about access as a whole, they don't have the same access to like the marked targets or designate targets. There's none of that in their uh, playbook. Instead, they have these anti-tank loiters, which are more powerful than the allied versions. Uh, the rocket loiter for the Brits just kind of misses. It's a little slow. It's not as powerful. But the Stuka anti-tank loiter and then the Wehrmacht anti-tank loiter, I'd recommend those two because they're just super powerful. They're really quick. They're hard to dodge. And it just seems like they're a little bit more effective than the allied versions. So with that, we're going to jump over to Wehrmacht now. Now, jumping from DAK to Wehrmacht, this is the faction that I'd say probably has the least amount of heavy tank counters or heavy tank counter abilities, and for a reason that I'll jump into later in this section. But first, I want to start with the Flak 30, because this is a pretty common weapon I see out there in team games, and it has, it's very powerful all across the board. It's AA, it's anti-infantry, but there's also a free ability, the button vehicle, which will half speed, half vision, and even on deflection will still reduce the speed. So I'm going to show you how powerful that can be. Like, let's say you catch someone moving back to, moving across the field, moving to counter and to swing on your teammate, something, some situation where you can catch them moving, and you'll see I'm taking the Matilda, which is the fastest unit in the game, or fastest heavy tank for the Allied, not the fastest unit in the game. Alright, so now I'll use the button ability from the Flak 30, and you can see it almost immediately stops it, makes it very vulnerable for these AT guns to fire. It's buttoned the whole time, still buttoned, still buttoned. It's going to be buttoned until this ability lifts. And by that point, the Matilda's dead. The Flak 30 did take some damage, but you saw how vulnerable that made the Matilda. So, remember that button vehicle, it's free. The quad track also has this ability, and I want to say there's another unit in the game that has button, but I can't think of it right now. The button vehicle ability is pretty good. I love it. I tend to go for it when I have it as an option. It's the U.S. machine gun. I think also has a button vehicle ability. All right, so these two abilities, these units are one's more common than the other. You don't see the Panzerbushka out a lot, but you do see the Stummel a lot, and you'll see the white phosphorus rounds used a lot as well. These units, this ability on its own won't be able to take down a heavy tank, and these two units on their own definitely won't be able to take down a heavy tank. But used in conjunction with each other or with AT guns or something can blind an enemy vehicle. So what it does is it reduces the target's vision to nothing, it reduces its speed to almost nothing, and it disables the weapon. It lasts for 7 seconds. So if you time it right, and then you use one white phosphorus, that hits, you have 7 seconds to fire on this. And if you have another unit that has white phosphorus and time it up right, oh, he can't shoot it because he can't see it. Now he should be able to shoot it. And there we go. There's a little bit of a delay, if you noticed, where they have to line it up and then fire. So I think if I do, like, let's say I do a barrage back here, and then I'm going to stop that and then fire. There's a little bit of a delay where it has to aim down and then fire. I don't know if the Panzerbushka does the same thing. Try to fire so it's a little bit closer. So he shoots, reloads, and there's still a little bit of a delay there. So I'm not sure exactly why that delay happens, but just be wary of that. It's about, I'm not going to time it up, but I'd say probably about a half-second delay. So if used correctly, though, the white phosphorus rounds, like I've pointed out in the previous video, can be very powerful and can win you that fight if used in conjunction with other AT guns. Now, I haven't done this test yet. I think 2 Panthers should be able to kill a Black Prince, but the reason why Wehrmacht doesn't have a lot of heavy tank counters is because in one of their battle groups, they have one of the best heavy tank hunters in the game, and that is the Panther. The Panther is a heavy tank itself, and it's made to kill other tanks, especially heavy tanks. So, on VAT 1, it gets a tank hunter ability. On the anything it hits is marked 25% easier to hit, and this will reset every time it's hit. So what we'll do is we'll have this Black Prince. I'm going to simulate a little chase, and we'll see who wins this fight. I'm not convinced the Panthers will win, but we'll have to see about that. So let's say you have a Black Prince on the ropes, you're chasing with 2 Panthers. Let them get some space, because maybe they have some AT guns in the back line. Maybe I gotta back off. But they're doing a good amount of damage. And you'd have to chase a little bit more to get the kill, but they keep up with the speed. And I can keep chasing if I needed to. But you could see, even as the Black Prince was backing up, they were able to get close, close the distance. This one's near death. He took a little bit less damage. The Black Prince is 240 out of 1200, so it's basically, if you had anything else on the field, this probably would be dead. And if I was a little bit more aggressive, that Black Prince would have been dead. So, Panthers are one of the better tanks in the game. For what they're made to do, they do it really well. So to recap, the Allied forces have a larger tool, a larger basket of abilities and tools to take care of heavy tanks, but that makes sense since the Allied forces are lacking in the heavy tank department. On the Axis side, they have one more heavy tank as of right now, but their heavy tanks are more specialized. They do a little bit more damage, I'd say, overall than the Black Prince, Churchill, and Matilda. The Panthers, the Brumbars, and the Tigers just seem to be very powerful. The Black Prince is probably on par with the Tiger, but there's not really anything that's equal to a Brumbar or a Panther with the Allied forces. So if you watch these videos, if you liked them, leave a comment, subscribe, let me know. It goes a long way. I do appreciate it. I've enjoyed seeing the comments and the feedback from the first part of this series, and so I'd love to hear some more from you guys if you want to see more videos like this, or if you have any ideas of something you want to see tested. And as a little treat for those of you who have stayed through the whole thing, I'm going to have 2 Panthers fight 2 Churchills being repaired by 2 recovery trucks, and we'll see who wins this fight.
Shit! That was close! Repair work! Get to it! Recovery! Under attack!
Pick up the pace!
Recovery vehicle receiving fire!
Alright, repair work! Get on it!
And there we have it. I'll leave you with that one, guys. Have a good day, and see you in the next one.